Oh, what? Oh, I'm your favorite person ever.
Favorite person ever.
Don't tell Natty that; she might get mad.
Oh, there we go. Back to bringing up Natty. No, I'm just kidding. You're
No.
good, Dennis. All right.
Good.
So ask your question.
All right. So, your name's Farah. Or how do you pronounce it?
Farha?
Farah. You seem like a smart person. Have you taken an IQ test?
I haven't, no. Have you?
Yeah, I have. I took like one or two when I was in school, but I was just wondering. You seem like a smart person, but okay. My second question would be what are your thoughts on like women having like sexual freedom?
My thoughts on women having sexual freedom, what would be the alternative? You just mean more social pressure for women to be more sexually modest? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean that.
Wait, you have
Or
to specify. Do you mean in terms of like legally? Should it be illegal, or do you mean in terms
no,
of
no,
like?
like
I think he just
women
means like
having more,
social conventions.
women being more open sexually, and this whole
Uh,
sexual liberation movement.
like, does she think it's good for their mental health, or just good for society in general?
Is it good for women that the whole
Okay, for their mental health. Okay, got it.
I think people are very varied. Like me personally, I'm a virgin because I just value having an emotional connection with someone to do anything. But I've said this before on different panels that I think I'd be lacking in self awareness if I like projected the way I feel having casual interactions with people onto women as a whole. Because I do think there are some women who can have a more masculine approach to sexual encounters and they can kind of dissociate and still go home at the end of the day and feel mentally okay with it. So I think it really depends person to person. I don't think people need to subscribe to like the overall feminist culture and like sexual positivity or sexual negativity or abstinence culture. I think people can kind of just look out for themselves in the same way, you know, we can argue that men are generally mentally capable of having dissociative sex with people. I think there are some women who are also capable of that. And conversely, I think there are some men who aren't okay with that and it does damage their mental health.
I
Um,
agree with everything you just said.
I understand what you're saying. I'm pro like individual freedom, but like in society, do you think like it's helped women more or it's hurt women more?
I think social pressure to be either sexually abstinent or sexually promiscuous hurts either way. Because again, you're just kind of applying like a blanket rule or a blanket prescription onto like a very diverse group of people. So I think pressuring women to be more sexually promiscuous and telling them that they'll feel more free if they're not waiting for marriage or waiting for a relationship will hurt a large subsection of women. And I think the alternative, telling women to be abstinent, will also hurt a large
Yeah,
subsection
yeah.
of women.
That confuses me. So, because you didn't really say anything. So, do you think that if there's social pressures that are put on women to not be promiscuous, don't you think that society is going to look entirely different than it does today? Why is it that you think that that's a worse or better society?
Oh,
That's
I think I was saying that I don't know if the social pressure is good either way. So I guess the absence of social pressure on the way women should act sexually, I think, is what's best. I don't think. Does that make sense? Like I'm saying, I think you can not sexually pressure women to, or socially pressure women to be more promiscuous, but I also don't think you should socially pressure women to be abstinent.
Let me explain it the
yeah,
way
but
I see it.
that's still bizarre because a consequence of being human is social pressures. So society operates off of social pressures for how to behave, how to act, how to walk, how to talk, what to wear, everything. So
Oh,
it's in a way inescapable that there's going to be social pressures applied, especially to sexuality, which is so important because it leads to procreation. If you were to have you know people in society pushing people towards sexual promiscuity, for instance, like feminism did, they end up with tons and tons of women who have OnlyFans, which has not been very good for women either, or the massive porn industry, which has not been very good for women or men, and all of these other types of problems. And I'm trying to like, if you're weighing these and you think on this hand, promiscuity causes huge problems. On this hand, using social pressures to tell women not to be sexually promiscuous causes less problems. Why wouldn't you go for the less problems? You know what I mean?
Right. I guess I don't know if it necessarily causes less problems. I think for me, for instance, I grew up in a very rigid Muslim household, and because I was kind of socially pressured into believing that most things in culture were morally wrong, I ended up with a very skewed moral compass, and it made me kind of just reject it all. And I feel like I'm still relearning what I actually intuitively believe to be right from wrong. So that's why I guess I'm saying, if I genuinely believed that one of those methods did produce a better outcome, then I would advocate for it. I guess I'm more arguing whether I think that's the case, because I
mean,
don't
you
know
took
if an abstinence
you took
only
your
ever
chastity
helps.
you took your chastity with you, and I'm guessing that the religious influences in your life were part of the reason that your chastity is still intact, right?
Sure, but I also
Don't
have
you
a
think that that's
OnlyFans,
better? Don't
so
you think that that's a better outcome for you?
Can I explain it the way I see it? The way I see it is, I think the whole sexual like liberation movement actually like devalued women a lot, because in the past, you know, if I wanted to get with a woman, I would have to marry her, I would have to buy her a house, give her stability. And now with the whole liberation, I feel like I'm I don't need to give a girl a house, I don't need to treat her right, I just like fuck her. And because of that, it carries over to the whole society. So I feel like it men's a lot of men, because like women are so open to having sex, they devalue them, and it hurts all women. So that's
But
kind
then,
of where I'm
why are you
coming
out there
from.
fucking so many chicks then? If you think it's
I
bad for
mean,
society?
I'm just seeing what her thoughts are, because I feel like in the past men had a lot more value in women. They put like women on a
Well, the
pedestal.
reason he's out there fucking a lot of chicks, Alex, because they let him. That doesn't mean that he doesn't think that it's bad for society. He can still act in a way that he knows isn't great for society,
I think it's
because of
bad
the
for.
availability. It's just like with drugs, right? If you have drugs more readily available for everybody, more people will take drugs. I promise you. So
Well,
it's the same exact
if
thing.
his position, it just depends how strongly he believes his position. If his position
I,
is that, hey, I think that casual sex is really bad for society, by him engaging in casual sex, he's in a way contributing to the
no,
problem.
my position is it hurts women and it devalues women. I'm not a woman, so it doesn't really affect. I mean,
Aren't
it
you,
might
aren't you,
Yeah.
affect like
Right,
it
right,
might.
Alex.
aren't you devaluing these women by contributing to that? Like maybe those girls would have stayed a virgin if you didn't fuck them.
Yeah, exactly, Alex. It's like being in prison and being against the prison food, right? But you still eat it. You still eat it though. What kind of
Well,
hypocrite? What kind of hypocrite is against the prison food but still eats it? What type of hypocrite?
I don't think that
I
there's
just want to
anything
know
worse.
her views. You feel like the
Alex,
whole
I think what
sexual
Alex is saying
liberation
is the
movement?
onus on men, because, or is it on the gatekeepers of sex? And I guess what Andrew's saying is that the moral onus is on the women because they're the gatekeepers of sex, right? Is that what you mean?
Correct.
Would you
Right.
agree with my assessment that it devalues women more?
Um,
Because no one's
devalues
trying to
women.
buy a woman a house nowadays.
But most women don't want a random dude to buy them a house.
But I think you guys understand my point.
I do, but I think that things have changed now that women like have jobs and are generally like more college educated than men. Are more likely to get a job than men. Men still tend to earn a lot more money at the very tops, but generally speaking, that's changed. Like 60 years ago, women weren't working, so it made sense for the man to have to take care of the woman. Now things have like radically changed in terms of that. By the way, I'm not arguing that a man shouldn't take care of a woman. I think you can make a really good argument for why that's the case. I'm just saying that's the reason why that's no longer essential. Like if a woman's making six figures, she doesn't need a guy to buy her a house or take care of her. She's already has her own money.
Yeah, that's an
So you
exception
think
though. That's
you
an
think women
exception.
have the same respect they did 20 to 40 years ago, or they have less respect nowadays?
From who? Who are we talking about?
From
From
men.
society overall, or men? Let's say men.
Well, I think we pedestalize women now way more than we used to in some ways.
In what ways?
Like the whole like the you go girl, you go queen type of thing, you see on like basically, yeah, like I think we do tend to, a lot of guys do tend to, and society in general tends to put women on a pedestal, and that wasn't really happening 20, 30 years ago. It's like in some extent it is starting to swing the other way, but in some situations it's like a woman can do no wrong. It's like a woman can say or do the most fucked up shit. It's like you go queen, right? So yeah, I don't know if we are as a society viewing women as less. I don't really see any evidence of that.
Well, no,
So
I
you
think. Wait, hang on, Alex. Listen, these are two different positions. So you're saying, on the one hand, which I agree with, that you're putting women up on some kind of bizarre pedestal where they don't belong. A lot of society does that due to the type of culture that we live in, which I'd agree with. But what
Yeah.
Dennis is saying is that the culture of valuing, in other words, valuable people valuing other valuable people, don't you think that the culture of promiscuity, in a general sense, that men who are valuable in some way are far less likely to go for these women who are engaging in these activities, especially promiscuity? I mean,
I
both can be true at the same time, in other words.
Yeah, I think if all things are being equal, like all things are equal, you take two girls, same age, same personality, same looks level, same weight, same everything, right? And you take 100 of each, and the first 100 is a virgin or has a body count of 1. The second group has a body count of 20. That for sure, the first group will outperform the second group. I do agree with that. So I do think there's a good amount of guys who value chastity, and that will give them an advantage in dating marketplace.
So
The
both
one
are
thing,
true. So both are true.
right. Well,
So
I'm not
then the
saying
thing is that the promiscuity has led to a worse society, while at the same time women have been put up on a pedestal. Both of these things are true at the same time.
Well, I'm not convinced that it has led to a worse society. Like, what is the evidence for that?
Well, we just
For women.
we just exhaustively went over quite a bit of evidence for that. Even if you're just comparing it to the society of the 1970s for your chart, and we just were maximum charitable and didn't even bring up the fact that the curvature likely is to go back down with the trend, you would still vastly prefer a society where that type of mental illness and everything else didn't exist for women and for men, right?
Established that in isolation, what's it called? Chastity is something that some men will select for, sure, right? But I don't know if that in of itself proves that women being more promiscuous is making society worse. I think maybe it's making their own attraction value a little bit worse, but I don't think it's making society as a whole worse. I would need to see
That's
an
what I was
argument.
gonna say. I don't know if lowering your dating pool necessarily means you're worse off in the grand scheme of things. Society could be a different question, but I guess individually,
Alex, you don't think that the huge amount of pornography that's out there, that's literally rewiring young men's brains to the point that they're exiting sexuality norms,
I'm not a fan of
period,
that.
that's all due to promiscuity. The list is
Is it
never
really
ending.
promiscuity or technology, though?
The allowance of promiscuity. If the technology existed before Larry Flynn, before the court decided that that was legal,
But then if
they
women
still wouldn't have been allowed to do it. What do you mean?
But then if women are
Larry
more
Flint.
promiscuous, then why do men even need to watch porn? Like, do you see how those things are counterintuitive? Like, if women are just these like massive,
Nobody
less
knew.
men need to watch porn.
Yeah, it's a social. Do you know what a social contagion is? It's a social contagion. It can start with a small amount of people, but the more you expose people to this contagion, the more that contagion catches on. Social norms are no different than any other disease in that way.
Well,
You can
there's also
have
a massive,
environmental social contagions, man.
but there's also a massive difference in access. Like 30 years ago, you had to go to a store, buy a DVD, find a DVD player, watch it on there. Now you can go on your phone and you can watch a triple gangbang in 30 seconds. Like, the access has changed. That's the difference between having to get drugs from a drug dealer and having drugs.
That's my whole point, though. Pre hustler. No, the technology existed. There were still nudie magazines and all kinds of smut and porn theaters and all kinds of things which have existed for 100 years. Hang on, for 100, you didn't have to go somewhere to get a nudie magazine. Okay, you didn't have to. The thing
You
is,
could go to the movie theater and
there
watch
was laws.
porn.
There were laws that stopped that from happening. And what's happened as a result of loosening those laws and making them more lax, you've ended up with this huge social contagion, which has indeed led to this. It's not just access. That's ridiculous, because if you cut off access, then the social contagion wouldn't exist, right? So that's still leading towards the promiscuity. Either which
Dennis,
way.
what do you think is more likely, for a guy to go to a movie theater and jerk off surrounded by other men, or for a guy to want to do it from the comfort of his home, like on his phone? Like, clearly, one of those is a lot easier than the other.
Nobody's saying it's not a contributing factor. Okay, I'm just stating that there was, if you had laws right this second, like you used to, that you couldn't even have smut, period. It wasn't even allowed in certain states, counties, jurisdictions, places like this. You couldn't even have it. Then who would care if the technology existed? You still couldn't access it. And putting up digital walls because everybody uses Google and places like this, you wouldn't even be able to find them unless you were really hunting for them. So
Sure,
yes, it is a social contagion for sure.
Sure, if the government outlawed pornography, yeah, it would make access a lot harder. But I thought, are you a libertarian, or what would you rate your politics? Like, what do you say you are?
I'm a Christian nationalist.
Okay, never mind. All right, Dennis, is there anything else you want to add on this?
Anything else I want to add on this? What are her thoughts on like prostitution? Should that be legal?
What are my thoughts on prostitution? You said?
Yeah,
Should it be legal? I don't know whether I would argue if it's morally good, but whether it should be legal, I think the way Andrew was saying before, whether we should advocate for abstinence only or more sexual positivity based off of consequences. I think if you legalize prostitution, I think it does end up helping a lot of prostitutes in terms of like safety, because they could actually, I don't know, they can ensure their safety more without fear of being criminalized. So I think from like a consequentialist perspective,
I like your
legalizing
painting.
prostitution is good. But do I think it's
Yeah,
a good
where'd you guys
morally
paint that
to
at?
allow prostitutes?
Dennis, this is not the time to do a goddamn cold approach.
Oh, my bad. I got distracted.
Well, doesn't that also necessarily lead to the inclusion of more people getting into the industry of prostitution who ordinarily would not have gotten into that industry because they had other options available to them? And that seems obvious to me, that just the prescription of we want to make this thing legal, especially prostitution, simply because then the current crop of prostitutes might be more safe who are streetwalkers. It still opens up the avenue for there to be a lot more people engaged in sex work who ordinarily wouldn't have been had it been criminalized. So it's like from your consequentialist standpoint, you have to be very cautious making a prescription like that.
I just
Yeah,
have a
I
quick.
guess-
Oh, you can respond. Sorry.
I guess, do I think prostitution is morally good for society? Probably not, because I think if men can seek out prostitutes, they're less likely to cultivate skills in which they would typically need to date women. But am I vehemently opposed to women going into prostitution? No. So I don't know if even factoring that in, if I would be against it. Like, I don't think it necessarily is better for society, but I also don't think I'm morally, I don't know if I see something completely wrong with women selling sex. I guess same way, you know, I don't see something wrong with women going on dates and sleeping with men outside of marriage. And then you could say that kind of, like the other guy was saying, kind of devalues them in society.
Well, let me ask you a different question. Other than the normative things that almost everybody on planet Earth would agree on, like murder and theft and rape and stuff like that being criminalized or being bad, is there anything in your worldview that you think should be criminalized or is bad outside of those normative things? Anything?
I don't know if I put things that I think are bad and things that I think that should be criminalized in the same bucket. So I'd have to think about it a bit.
Yeah,
more.
either or. Just what's bad outside of just the normative 10 Commandments stuff? What else is bad? Is there anything else in your worldview that's even bad?
I do think pornography addiction is bad. I think too much sexual promiscuity can be bad, again, if it's projected onto the general public. But I don't know what I think is the right way to remedy that. I don't know if I believe in criminalizing it. Those things.
Well, there's many things that are bad. Fast food is bad. Lack of exercise is bad. Lack of sleep is bad. Like lack of socialization is bad. Isolationism is bad. Not lying to your friends is bad. Yeah, I mean, there's a million things that are bad. I don't know if
No. First of all, bad's a moral claim, right? Bad is a moral claim. So it's immoral. You wouldn't say that isolation is immoral, right? You wouldn't say that a porn addiction is immoral.
No, it's not.
Right?
It's just bad.
You're saying bad in a normative way of you shouldn't do it because it hurts you, right? But you mean it in a moral way. What I'm asking Farah is if she considers anything to be immoral outside of just the regular 10 Commandment stuff. Is there anything at all that you can think of?
Is lying covered in the 10 Commandments?
Yeah.
Okay.
Immoral, like wrong to do because it hurts society versus like isolationism, fast food. Those are
just immoral,
bad because they don't hurt other people.
Based on whatever it is that you think is immoral outside of just what's on the tablets of the 10 Commandments. What else? Can you think of anything that you would consider immoral?
I mean, what I would say would be like if you're a boss.
I'm not asking you, Alex. Hang on. Let her answer.
I don't want to answer. Okay,
you can answer while I think.
Nah, I don't want to detract from the debate. It's supposed to be between you two, so I'll answer after you.
Anything else that I think is immoral outside the 10 Commandments? If I'm being honest, I'm not sure what the 10 Commandments are.
Don't steal.
Just normative stuff. Just what you would consider normative societal stuff. Like you can't
cheat.
kill people, you can't lie, you can't steal, you can't be bad to your mommy and dad, things like this, right?
Outside of those normative things, is there anything I consider immoral? Nothing that comes to mind.
Right.
Like one I would say is littering, right? Littering is not against the 10 Commandments, but I think it's morally wrong, especially if you're doing it with like massive amounts of like waste that's gonna like ultimately like cause issues to the environment. Another one I would say is like not mistreating your employees. I don't think that's covered in the 10 Commandments, right? But if you're like a really shitty boss and you're like just abusing your employees, basically that's not a good thing. So yeah, I think there's a few things like that. I actually had a question for you, Andrew. It's a two-part question. So do you think the government should make porn illegal?
Oh yeah. Porn should be most certain at the very least as a compromise. I'd be willing to say that it all has to be behind a paywall. All of it has to be behind a paywall. At the very least, I would say that because that would greatly limit access. But as far as what I'd like to see, what I think ought to happen is absolutely the porn industry is a detriment to all of society. Okay.
And the reason you want to make it illegal is because it's bad for people, right?
Well, no, it's not just because it's bad for people. So there's other reasoning behind it too, which would fall under the religious, which is that it's sacrilegious towards God. It's kind of a laughter in the face of his sacraments, and it's a debauchery of what marriage is supposed to represent. So from my perspective, it's an inversion to Christianity itself, to have people fornicating on a screen for other people to fornicate to that, or in some way, jerk off to it or whatever. I would see these as definitely being immoral actions based on that. Yeah.
Okay, but a lot of people.
Are you going to bring up smoking, Alex? But you smoke. Are you going to bring it? Go ahead, Alex.
I was going to ask you. Do you think government makes cigarettes illegal? That is a serious question.
I know. We've already covered it before, right? But would you like it? Would you like it covered again? I don't think that if the government were to move to strike off things like fast food and cigarettes altogether, that I would necessarily have a massive problem with it. Okay, they already are kind of doing it. You know what I mean? However, I think that you have to have varying levels of distinction when it comes to the damage certain things do to society, and that you can have something like this, for instance, which doesn't impair a person's judgment in any way, shape, or form. Certainly doesn't seem to hurt them in the short term, maybe over an elongated period of time. And that's not doing a hefty amount of damage in the same way that porn is. So everything that's bad still has to be tiered and tailored to the individual society that you're in, or the society won't work. So you can't just be like, well, bubblegum's bad for you. Should that be out? It's like, well, no, not really. What about a cheeseburger? Should that be out? Well, not so sure about that either, because the significance of the damage, it's debatable. Okay. But I think pornography, things like pornography, if you're scaling it, the damage is so significant that it's difficult to make a cohesive argument and a good argument for why we ought to ban it.
Well, I do agree with you that severity should play a massive role, but I guess one of them is mentally bad for you, pornography. One of them is physically bad for you. Like, as far as I understand, no one's died from pornography, but millions of people have died from cigarette use. So
that's not true. People have died. Of course, they've contracted diseases, all kinds of things, which have happened. Of course.
How are you going to get a disease from?
Of course, they've gotten HIV. No, there's people who participate in making it, Alex. What are you talking about?
Okay, you're talking about the porn stars.
And he means the audience is just asking solely about consumption.
Yeah, and not only that, but if it leads to additional promiscuity, then you end up with STDs, which we could have gotten rid of. They literally, STDs would be gone. HIV would be gone if you had a chaste society. These things wouldn't even exist. So it's like, no, there's big, and that's not my only problem with it. It's just one of many. So if we're going to tear it off, it's like, look, we have to have things that are scalable. It's like a slidable scale. Would I say that cigarette smoking is good? No, it's not good. Is it good for me? No, it's not even good for me. But do I scale it at the same level as I would porn addiction? Of course not. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
What do you think kills more people, pornography or alcohol?
Oh, man, listen, on a 1-to-1, it would be difficult to make a case that pornography, that you can track how many people pornography has killed. But that's not the only damage that we're looking at. It's just raw deaths. Okay.
Well, what do you think causes more
I don't
damage?
care about just the deaths. It's not the only consequence I
What do
care
you think
about.
causes more damage to society, pornography or alcohol?
Oh, for sure, pornography.
Okay.
I don't even think it's. I think you'd have a hard time making a great case that alcoholism caused more damage overall to society than pornography.
Well,
That's
not alcohol,
ridiculous.
not alcoholism, alcohol consumption. Sure, there's all kinds of issues. A DUI doesn't kill anyone, but you fucked up your life. Maybe you get into a fight at a bar and you crack your neck.
Yeah.
Maybe you get drunk and you say something to your girlfriend that you shouldn't have, and she breaks up with you. I mean, there's myriads of ways that alcohol has.
And there's some people who have prescriptions for that, and even in the United States, you have what are called dry counties where they don't allow any alcohol in the county if you want to live there at all. It's totally legal there. They just don't issue liquor licenses.
Well,
I mean,
we're
government
not talking about-
does make these things illegal in some areas, in some sectors. Do I think that you should just outlaw alcohol for everybody? Of course not. That's ridiculous. Okay. And people do have to take responsibility for their actions, but on a scalable, on a sliding scale, I just don't think that the damage to society is worse from alcoholism than mass consumption of pornography. I don't even think it's close, to be honest with you.
You keep saying the word alcoholism, but I'm not talking about alcoholism. I'm talking about the consumption of alcohol in general.
Even then, I still don't think that it's in any way, shape, or form comparable to the results that you get from society being literally rewired, their brains being rewired, and sexual norms between human beings being rewired from mass pornography, where 3-year-olds hop online and they see a pop-up for a naked chick, just depending on which site they go to. They might just Google something about like a fucking cartoon character and then click on a site and there's a bunch of cartoon characters having sex or whatever. Okay. This kind of thing is fucking outrageous. And yes, the damage that it does is massive, even in some type of comparison to alcohol itself, which, by the way, is completely avoidable, right? You don't really have to run into alcohol. It's really hard to get away from any type of media, that doesn't have overt sexual meaning anymore. It's difficult to do.
It's pretty easy to avoid pornography. I've done it for a long time.
That's not what I said. That's not what I said. I said it's really difficult to get away from media that does not have overt sexual tones to it. It's really difficult to do.
Do you think that should be made illegal too?
I didn't say that you have to.
Because we're talking about things that are illegal.
These are scalable things. Not every action is as immoral as another action. Do I think that having a few drinks, for instance, is immoral? Of course not. Do I think being a drunk is immoral? I do. I think that that's something that you have a moral imperative to do something about. Okay,
but we're not talking about morality.
Force feeding
damage to society.
Well, the things that I generally want to make illegal, not all things, but most of the things I look at that I would say I want this to be illegal, are things that I would look at that I consider to be immoral generally. Not always the case. Something like, blasting through a stop sign, I don't necessarily consider that immoral. You know what I mean? So maybe you can have laws like that, which I'm neutral on, but I'm just saying by and large, when you're talking about these things on a scalable level, yeah, man, pornography is fucking brutal. That's a brutal one.
I agree with you that pornography causes harm to society. I just think that alcohol causes way more harm to something than
well, we can come back and debate that sometime. I'm happy to do it.
I guess we got to disagree on that. All right, let's bring on 1 or 2 more people, and then let's wrap up. You guys can let me know in the chat what do you think about that one. What's up, Brad?
Yo, what up? I just saw a little bit of it. I just tuned in the last maybe 15 minutes. But okay. I agree with Andrew so far.
About which point? We talked about a lot of different things.
I think, yeah, I mean, I'm all for the government making certain things illegal for the benefit of society.
Aren't you a libertarian?
No.
For some reason, I thought you were. So what are you? You're a Republican, or what are you?
Yeah, I mean, I think they all have their pros and cons, but overall, I would call myself Republican. I agree with them the most. But
So do you think government should make alcohol illegal?
well, put it this way. I mean,
We could save a million lives.
yeah, I mean, put it this way. I love alcohol. You know, I do get drunk a few times a month, and for me, it's never been a problem. It's just been something fun. But if somebody said, "Hey, let's ban it because it will help our brothers and sisters who do have alcohol problems and it will help society," I understand where they're coming from. It's a good argument.
Yeah, it will help society. We can also help society by telling everyone to not leave their house, right? We will significantly minimize the amount of deaths.
Not
Or
the
on a
same,
less
brother.
extreme level,
Don't straw man.
we can help
Not
not
the
straw
same.
man, it's an
Yeah, but
analogy.
don't things have to be tempered in even your world with intuition and reason?
Sure,
Like
of course.
you can't that what you're saying actually that wouldn't help society. In fact, if you told everybody to stay home, that happened during the lockdown. It didn't help anybody. It was one of the most harmful things that was ever done in the history of the United States, probably, is when you told everybody they had to stay home. So no,
Okay, I'll give you a different
hang on.
analogy.
First of all, I reject that.
Hmm.
But even if I were to grant that it did help people in some way, it was good for people. You still have to temper things with what is reasonable. And it's like,
Yeah, of
look,
course.
having mass amounts of sexual overtones everywhere in society, especially in front of kids, is not helpful to society. It's not good for anybody ever. And it's because most people drink responsibly, though, but some people become alcoholics and get into drunk driving accidents. Do we ban alcohol? No, that's absurd. There's no temperance there.
I
There's no
agree with
That's
you.
where I would have to. That's where I
do
would
think
say
I
I
do
could
think it's
see both
absurd.
sides of
Wait,
the argument.
let me respond. I do think it's absurd to ban alcohol, just like I think it's absurd to ban pornography. Right? Are there a whole bunch of people who watch pornography without having any issues? Sure. Right. So I would say to you, Brad. Okay, let me give you a different analogy. We can save a lot of people's life if we ban unhealthy food. If we get rid of corn, we get rid of soy, we get rid of grains. Right? We can
Oh
save a
yeah,
lot.
I would do that in a heartbeat.
So then how about a compromise? So then how about the compromise I was talking about earlier? Just like with alcohol, you can't drive drunk, right? That's a crime. You go to fucking jail for doing that, right? You go to jail for getting
you can hurt another person.
yeah, you go to jail for being drunk in public, even if you're not hurting anybody. Okay.
So look,
There's all kinds
so-
of things which can be criminalized to put restrictions on these things. Why won't you do that with porn? Just do that. We'll start with just that. Just start with let's put it all behind a paywall. So it's still accessible to all the lunatics you want it to be accessible to, but the people who shouldn't be accessing it and the society that doesn't want to see it, they don't have to see it. It's still there for everybody. Why is that a bad compromise, Alex?
I'm not against that compromise. I'm just against the idea of perma banning porn. But I think that if you like right now, you don't have to watch porn. Like I don't know where you're getting this idea from. That's like forced on you. Like I haven't watched porn in a very long time. It's not like what you have the same ability to show restraint with porn as you do with alcohol. Neither one of those is
the reason that pornography is so difficult to define. Even the Supreme Court has trouble defining what it is, and they say things like "I know it when I see it," is because what you consider pornography and what other people consider pornography may not be the same thing. So I'm saying overt sexualization. You know, there used to be FEC guidelines and things like this, even around television shows and movies, for what you could express in rating systems, for what could even be expressed in media, so that people who didn't want that experience didn't have to have that fucking experience, right? But those guidelines have all been lessened and lightened, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not saying all of them were sane. Probably a lot of them did need to go. But in this particular case, it seems like, fine, if you don't agree with me that pornography should be illegal or you think it's some type of hypocrisy because the greater evil is alcoholism, okay, I'll just compromise with you then. And just like we have restrictions on alcohol, let's just put the restrictions on porn too and put it behind a paywall. Unless you have an argument for it.
I'm not against some restrictions on pornography. I'm not against that. Obviously, I don't think children should be watching it and whatnot. My whole point was about making it outright illegal. I mean, this to me seems a little bit similar to the drug war, right? Like we've had the drug war for 50 years. It's caused more harm than good. So I feel like if you make porn illegal, number one, I don't think it's the government's job to tell people what they can and cannot do as long as it doesn't hurt other people, right? So what I do with my body, what I choose
their job to do
but
that.
Alex, it is hurting other people if you're addicted
who
to
cares
porn
anyway?
and
That
you're
is not
destroying
the
your
government's
family.
job. The government's job is not to enforce all of your pleasures or let you have all of your
No,
pleasures
the government's job is not to.
as long as it's not hurting somebody else. Where on earth did you get the idea that that's the government's job? The government's job is to pass law based on morals. That's what their job is. Their job
think it's
is
the
to pass
government's job
legislation for the people, which
Do you think,
it
do you think it's the
directly
gov-
hang on, which directly conflates or is directly comparable to the people's morality. So the people don't want this shit. The government's moral imperative is to get rid of it. That's their imperative, just like with illegal immigration. Who are illegal immigrants hurting, Alex? Should we just have an open border as long as people aren't hurting other people? That's ridiculous. That's not even. That's not what government's there to do.
Would your whole argument go out the window if 90% of people say they want pornography to be legal? You said the job of the government is to enforce the will of the people. So what if the will of the people is that most people want it to be legal? So then does that dismiss your argument?
No, you would just have to try harder to change the will of the people, which is what we're doing right now, but using arguments. And what we're doing right now, having these discussions, what we're doing now, having these debates on media, all of it's in order to sway the minds of people. The same way that they were swayed to be pro-porn, they can be swayed the same way to be anti-porn. So in this case, though, when you're talking about legislation, answer my question. Should we have an open border? Who are those people hurting?
No, I don't think.
No, you don't think so, because the government has functions past just whatever fucking hedonism you want today, Alex.
Yeah, well, my whole point was that I don't think the government should try to protect you from yourself. I'm not saying the government needs to enforce hedonism. It's a complete straw man of my argument. I just don't think it's the government's role to protect you from yourself.
Alex,
your argument for hedonism is that you should be able to do whatever the fuck you want as long as you're not hurting somebody else. That's pure hedonism. There's nothing else that could even possibly be besides fucking hedonism. So you're a hedonist.
That's called freedom, my man.
No, that's called hedonism.
Alex, can I?
You can have freedom.
Hang
on. Wait. You can have freedom with all kinds of laws. What are you talking about? In fact, laws necessary to enforce freedom. Like, for instance, can I have a grenade launcher? No, you can't.
Obviously that can be used to hurt someone else.
Yeah, so can a fucking pencil. So can a pencil. But the thing is that it's all application, right? You can't say total freedom. That's absurd.
No one's saying total freedom. I'm just saying.
So you're just saying hedonism.
I'm a libertarian, so I don't believe that it's the government's job to protect you from yourself. It's my political philosophy. You may not be a libertarian. You may think it is the government's job to protect you from yourself. Then we just have a philosophical disagreement.
Why? You want the government protects you from yourself all the fucking time. You have all kinds of traffic laws that you have to obey. You have standards for how your cars have to be built. You have standards for how your food. Hang on. You have standards for how your food has to be processed. You have standards for how your water has to be treated. What the fuck are you talking about? They protect you from the stupid decisions you would make daily all the time.
Do you think you should have to wear a seatbelt?
With the whole driving thing, that's all about other people. So if your tires are not conflated, if you're speeding, you're more likely to hurt someone else.
A seatbelt?
What about drinking poisonous water? You're not hurting anybody else then.
I'm not in favor of mandating seatbelts either.
Okay, Alex, can I lay out an argument real quick? So, okay, here's a quick argument, kind of, seeing both sides. So let's take, you could do this with any vice, but let's take alcohol, for example, right? Let's say there's two ways to look at this. Let's say in a society, 90% of people can enjoy alcohol in moderation, no problem. 10% get addicted. It ruins their life. They go out, they commit crime, they steal, and they hurt society. One way you can look at that is why punish the 90% for the 10% who can't handle it? Another way to look at it is if you really care about every citizen as your brother and sister, as your children of God, you don't want them to suffer. And another way, 10% might not sound like a lot, but in America, we have 330 million people. So 10% of that is 33 million people. Do you want to live in a country where 33 million people are addicted to a drug?
Obviously, it's not ideal, but I think it's each person's right to decide what they want to put in their body, what they don't want to do. Just like are you pro-vaccine mandates, Brad?
No, because I don't know what I can say on YouTube, but I don't believe in all the lies they made up.
you can say whatever you want on my channel, but if I was to show you some science that shows that,
I didn't want to get your channel in trouble because
don't even talk about it. I'm telling you, don't. It's a bad idea. No, because I'm streaming too. Yeah, don't talk about that shit.
I'll respect that. Although
I'll just say I don't believe certain lies, so I don't believe in certain things.
No, I just think that you cherry pick the things you want the government to enforce and not enforce.
I don't think everybody does. Everybody does. So do you.
I don't think it's about maximum good of the people. I think it's about here are the things I believe, so let's have the government enforce that. Here are the things I don't believe, so let's not have them enforce
Yeah,
that.
that's right. That's exactly how it is.
I can flip that back on you.
Okay.
Everybody cherry picks what they want the government to enforce and not enforce.
I only want the government to enforce things that can hurt other people.
Yeah, but you look at hurting other people only like if I were to walk up and punch you in the face or like shoot you or like run you over with my car. But you don't look at it like the man who's addicted to porn who ruins his family and everything like that. That's hurting other people.
No, I don't see them. There's degrees of it, but no, that's like you can fucking hurt your family just by being a dipshit. You can hurt your family by staying home.
Yeah,
and
by
watching
being addicted to porn.
Right?
That's being a dipshit. Is being addicted to porn.
You can be a dipshit and not be addicted to porn. Okay, so no, I look at it more directly. So, for example, with illegal immigrants, yeah, technically, if you let a bunch of illegal immigrants, it doesn't technically hurt anyone. But if you go like one step further, well, a lot of those immigrants are going to be criminals, right? If you have complete open borders, you let everyone in.
Oh, so now it's pre-crime, Alex? Now you're doing pre-crime?
What do you mean? Those criminals will hurt other people, right? So that's I see as
well. I mean, then you shouldn't let men in, Alex, because most of them are going to end up being, you know, a much higher percentage of them versus women are going to be criminals. So we shouldn't even let in men by that logic,
I think we
right?
should check to make sure someone doesn't have a criminal record.
Yeah, that's right. But the thing is that even if they don't, even if you let in only men and women who don't have a criminal record, it's the men who are mostly going to end up being the criminals. That's your same argument for illegal immigration. No, that's not why you don't want illegal immigration.
Open borders means that even the criminals get to go in.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with
I'm saying that's an example that was something that's not good about open borders.
Yeah, okay, but you could just have open borders for only women, and then you would greatly reduce that singular issue that you have, right? That's not the only reason you have it. You have a border there so that you can reduce cultural influences, so that you can reduce spying, so that you can reduce all sorts of different things that you need your government to protect you from, which if Alex had his own way, and he could just do whatever he wanted, you probably would have killed yourself 20 times over without those types of protections from the government.
How would I have killed myself 20 times over?
Because, Alex, who taught you to purify water?
I use water balls, so I don't.
Yeah, who taught you to go shopping for the correct style of food that you know won't poison you? All these things are FDA guidelines, and all of these. It's not just that, but what about defrauding? Right? When you're talking about fraud laws, you're talking about zoning laws, you're talking about restrictions on where you can live because you might build your fucking house on quicksand. There's all sorts of shit that's there to protect you.
Sure, there's degrees of it, but when it comes to the water thing, the government has restrictions on water, so the water companies can't kill you by putting massive amounts of fluoride in there. There's still a direct harm to someone. Right, that's why there's water restrictions.
No, there's only the possibility of it. That's it. It's just a possibility. Well, there's nothing saying that if they eliminate the laws, that these water companies are going to suddenly start poisoning you. In fact, as a libertarian, you would have to say no. The optimal thing would be to let these water factories do this without government restriction, because if their business model was to poison people, then they wouldn't have a business anymore, right?
No, their business model is to save as much money as possible. So you do need some reasonable regulations on companies, where there's a difference between regulations on companies that sell things to other people and regulations on yourself as an individual.
Alex, let me ask you something.
So it just seems like a distinction without merit to me, man. It seems like you want the government. It seems like you want the government to just kind of enforce your type of hedonism, which I'm fine with the fact that you say that, but then don't be a hypocrite and say, hey, I don't want you to do this thing. And the reason I have for that is because the government's only function is this, and this is all I think the government should do, when in fact, that's not what you think they should do.
No, you haven't pointed out a single contradiction. I do think the government should primarily only step in when it comes that you're going to hurt someone else.
That's not what you said. You said the word only. That's not the same as the word primarily. That's a totally different fucking word.
Okay. I thought we were talking about individuals. So if we're talking about companies as well, then I would say mostly.
Those are individuals. What do you mean?
A corporation is not an individual.
Yes. Who do you think? Corporations, LLC. Okay. You think corporations are born? Do you think they're born?
Do you think Pepsi is one person?
I think that there's one person ultimately who's going to be in charge of Pepsi. Ultimately, when you get to whoever has the most stake or the most ownership or the most sway, it's going to be one person. But these giant corporations are just a conglomerate of individuals, right? These are still
Well, first of
individuals
all,
making
it's
individual
not-
choices.
First of all, it's not just one person. There's a board typically that rules how things go. So that's fundamentally not true. The second thing is, don't you think there's a difference?
Hang on, Alex.
Whoa, hang on.
Well,
Let me make this.
you're wrong already. A
Wait, don't you
board,
think-
hang on. A board is never
wait,
equal. A board's never equal, Alex.
Yes, there's the one chairman. I understand that. Don't you think that there's a big difference in the impact between how much damage one person can do and how much damage a Fortune 500 company can do? Like, don't you think there's a massive difference in impact there?
Sometimes there is.
Sometimes?
Yeah. Sometimes
Not always?
I think individuals who have private companies can do as much damage as a giant LLC can in some cases. What do you mean?
No, if you have a private company, there's still regulations that apply to
Right.
you.
That's right. There's still regulations
less
that apply to
regulations.
them.
There's less regulations in a public company.
So
There's
who's
still-
hang on. So you can have an individual, you agree with me, who's in charge of a massive company which is privately owned, and you still want that motherfucker regulated, don't you?
To some extent, sure.
Yeah, to some extent. So that's what I'm saying is like, listen, if you
Because those
really probe your own worldview, you start to
Because
figure
those are-
out like
Because those,
pure
dude,
hedonism isn't really what you want.
bro, because those regulations are protecting other people from the shit that company can sell them. That's why I want them. It still goes back to my initial principle of, I think the government, generally speaking, should only step in to protect you from hurting other people. So if you're selling shitty water that's covered with fluoride, you are hurting other people.
Yeah, but that's just based on potentialities, though. Now you're doing pre-crime. You're just assuming that they're going to do X. You can't prove that a company's going to do it and that you even need to regulate them.
If you look at like the 1880s, before we had a lot of the regulations, yes, the companies were doing a lot of that shit.
Some companies were and some weren't, right?
Well,
it's not like
clearly,
it's not a monolith. There's plenty of companies that operate in a
every
moral.
company.
Hang on, there's plenty of companies that operate in a moral framework and don't do anything to poison or hurt their customers whatsoever. A construction company might be one such company, does great work, right? Doesn't need all the zoning and the red tape and all the bullshit. They have to follow and adhere to all of those things for your personal safety. And the only delineating factor that you have on restrictions is, hey, don't restrict my hedonism, bro. Like, you can restrict everything else, but don't restrict my fucking hedonism, because that's bad. That's where I draw the line. It's like,
bro, I
it just
don't
seems like
watch. Wait, you're assuming I watch porn. I don't watch porn. It's
no.
not part of my
That's not what I
hedonism.
mean by hedonism. Okay, hedonism just means
Well, you said
that you
restrict
want.
my hedonism. I
Yeah,
don't watch porn.
but do you know what hedonism means? It just
Yeah,
means
it's like-
it just means you're operating within maximum pleasure. Whatever gives you maximum pleasure, those are the things that you value. So whatever those things
That's not
are,
true either.
yeah, it is true. That's what a hedonist is.
I'm not a hedonist, bro. Or not.
You
not
are.
entirely a hedonist.
You
not
are.
really, dude. I delay pleasure all the time. I don't do drugs.
For
I
greater
don't watch
pleasure.
porn.
You delay it for greater pleasure.
No, I delay it for self-fulfillment and growth.
So greater
I-
pleasure.
What? So you think everything?
Why
in
would you
life-
delay? Why would you delay pleasure now for anything other than more pleasure later? You wouldn't.
So I can accomplish things in life, unless you count accomplishing things.
Those things
as
give you pleasure. Yeah.
So you think anyone who's trying to accomplish anything in life is a hedonist?
Just no. I think that hedonists are hedonists. I think there's people who have
How's that a
all
research?
sorts of moral restrictions that they put on themselves, which are contrary to the things they think are pleasurable.
So do you
Contrary
think-
to it.
Do you think a CEO of a company who is working really hard and delaying his gratification so he can build a successful business is a hedonist?
Depends on his motivation. For you, the motivation seemingly is just that you want unlimited or no restriction whatsoever and unlimited personal freedom to engage in hedonic principles, which is just whatever gives you maximum pleasure.
It's not about
And
hedonism,
anybody
it's
who
about-
steps in to try to draw any sort of line with that, you're upset with that. You don't want that. So, I
Alex,
mean, what else
think
is that besides
because
hedonism?
because I don't think it's the government's role to step in and tell people what they can and cannot do, assuming it doesn't hurt other people. It just goes back to my philosophy. I don't
Of
smoke
hedonism.
cigarettes.
Of hedonism.
I don't smoke cigarettes. I don't think cigarettes should be illegal. If anything, you're more hedonist than me. You drink, you smoke. I don't do either one of those things. Why do you smoke
Wait a
cigarettes?
second. Wait a
Is
second.
that part of
think
your
they should
religious
be
belief?
legal.
Try to understand.
that's
Try to
hedonism.
understand what hedonism is. Right. If you're doing, let's say you pick up
You're doing
litter
things
all
for
day. Hang
pleasure.
on. Let's say you pick up litter all day because that's the thing that gives you maximum pleasure in life. That's all you care about is picking up litter. Right. You only go for whatever the pleasure sensor is. Everybody has some degree of that. I think most people are attracted to some degree of that, but there are people not just based on postponing for greater pleasure, but actually restrict access to things that would give them great pleasure based on some moral code, moral infrastructure. But usually that's religious. You're a secularist, so it doesn't surprise me you operate on a hedonic calculus.
Right, but you're doing two very hedonistic things, which is drinking and smoking.
What
I
makes
don't
them
do either one of
Hang
those
on,
things.
hang on. First of all,
Are you
can
doing those
claim
things for some
anything?
greater
You can claim anything that I'm doing because I derive pleasure from it would be hedonistic, but it's not. Hedonism is a totality of an individual's actions, and if they're based around moral principles or
You
if they're
just said
based
that
around
it's a
personal
scale.
pleasure,
You just said it's a scale.
the totality. Yes, it's
You
totality.
just said that everyone is a little bit hedonistic.
I think everybody's attracted to some things that are pleasurable. Yes, that doesn't mean they're hedonists.
Okay,
A
so
hedonist
well,
is
you
you
just
take
said
the
earlier that everyone's a
totality.
little bit of
You
hedonist.
take the totality of what a person does, and if they're only operating off of, well, I just go for whatever's the most pleasurable thing for me to do, and now sometimes I'll delay that pleasure for more pleasure later. That's definitely hedonism, unless you have some
So
principles you're
basically,
basing it on other than that.
So basically, anyone who's not religious is a hedonist in your worldview.
A heathen and a hedonist for the most part, but no, there's utilitarians and people like this who have all kinds of principles outside. Well, I mean, not utilitarians; they're all hedonists basically.
I have a million
But
principles.
consequentialists usually will base everything on hedonism. In fact, they call themselves hedonists, like utilitarians almost always do. But deontologists, they're not hedonists; they're the opposite of hedonists. So, yeah, like you as a utilitarian, consequentialist, yeah, it doesn't surprise me that you're a hedonist.
Well, first of all, I'm not a pure consequentialist or utilitarian. Second of all,
Maybe
there's
you're
a
not a
million
pure
principles. There's a million principles that I have. Like, what makes you think that I don't have any principles that I base my life on? That's absurd.
What?
What are the principles?
Yeah.
Don't do harm to other people. Be a good person. Be a good friend. Be a good partner.
Those are all just like those, but you do all
create
those
good,
things.
create it good in the world instead of causing
Yeah.
harm. I mean, there's a million
But
principles.
you base doing all of those things on pleasure sensory. So you think that it's more pleasurable to you to be a good person, right? That's why you do it.
Well, it's more pleasurable for you to be religious.
Well, no, it's not. It would be far more pleasurable for me not to be religious. Religion puts all kinds of restrictions on me. So that I do things, in fact, that I ordinarily don't want to do.
So me having my principles is just for pleasure, but you having your religious principles.
Well, you don't have principles. You have no justification other than your subjective outlook. That's it. So your only justification for principles is like whatever you think up as a principle. That's it.
Right.
You don't have anything else.
Your justification is something you read in a 2,000-year-old book.
No, my justification comes from presuppositionalism and the proof in the existence of God the Father. That's where my justification comes from, which is not only a logical position, but it is at least something I can base morality on. And that those morals, I may not want to follow them, but I follow them anyway, even in the absence of pleasure. It would be the opposite of hedonism. It's not that I don't do some things. Not that I don't do some things for pleasure. I'm just saying that my whole outlook isn't based around that. As a consequentialist,
sometimes there's principles I have that don't cause me pleasure, but I do them anyway because they're part of my principles, right?
What?
The same argument applies.
What?
Like, what do I not do? I don't know. Like, for example, I think sometimes that lying could cause me pleasure, right? Like, for example, if I did something that, I'm not happy about in my relationship, it would be a lot easier for me to lie to my girlfriend, right? And
yeah, but you don't think lying is immoral?
Yeah, I do.
Why?
Why do I think lying is immoral?
Yeah.
I think because it's not. I think it's because it's. I don't really have a good answer why I think it's immoral.
That's my answer. Listen. Stop. Alex, that's my whole point. I know you don't have a good answer for that, and that's okay. I'm not even beating you up. By the way, hedonism is not an insult, by the way. It's a necessity if you're a utilitarian. All utilitarians operate on what's called a hedonic calculus. And what you're
I'm not denying
every prescription I've ever heard from you is utilitarian. So
I'm not denying that I have some hedonistic tendencies, but so do you. I'm not more hedonistic than you. You chain smoke and you drink. I don't do either one of those things. They're both hedonistic things.
These
They're both in the pursuit of pleasure. Unless you're smoking to get closer to God, unless you're drinking because Jesus wants you to. Like, come on. You know you're doing both those things for pleasure. Those are two things that I'm not doing.
I'm
So
not disputing either of those things. You're not understanding the point.
Really just as much vice as me, if not more. So if anything, we're the same level of hedonism.
Hedonism's not about vice, you fucking idiot. I've just explained this 5 times. Listen, listen, it's not about vice. It's not about vice.
Pleasure, according to your own definition.
Pleasure, yes. It's about your morality being based around pleasure. Everything you think is moral is based around pleasure. The hedonic calculus, which is the guy who came up with utilitarianism, his name is Bentham, right? He came up with the hedonic calculus. It's critical to utilitarianism is hedonism.
Okay, I just pulled up the definition. The pursuit of pleasure, sensual self-indulgence. The pursuit of pleasure, which is what you said earlier. So
but what's the philosophical term?
The dictionary.
What's the philosophical term?
When you smoke, when you drink, you're pursuing pleasure.
I've already, man, I can't go around in this again. I've already explained this to you 5 times. I agree with that.
Like, I don't know why.
I agree that I have some vices and that I do think I'm not a perfect man. Absolutely. That's true.
No one is.
That has nothing to do with hedonism.
We both seek vices. We just seek different vices. We both seek pleasure.
Hedonism's not about vices.
It's about seeking pleasure, indulging in pleasure. Yes, seeking pleasure.
No, it's not just about indulging in pleasure. It's a
literally the textbook definition.
Bro, stop. I'll explain it to you again.
Okay.
Hedonism is the central point to utilitarianism. So the ought. Why ought utilitarians do things? Why should utilitarians do things? They base it all around pleasure and happiness. Pleasure and happiness. That's how they know if something's wrong or if something's right. They're all of them are hedonists.
Right. I mean, all of them. Okay. So the doctrine that, I'm just going to pull up a definition. Doctrine that moral value can be defined in terms of pleasure utilitarianism. Yeah. That's not what I believe. I don't think moral value is defined in pleasure utilitarianism. There's a lot of things that feel really good that give you pleasure, which I think are anti moral value. So
what are utilitarians? They just march everything on utils. So they're like, this thing has added pleasure, but it does X amount of damage. So the utils are lower than this. So even if this gives me more pleasure, because the negative utils, we can't do that thing. It's all hedonism though, bro.
It just seems like the crux of your argument is that unless you're religious, then you're a hedonist.
Unless you're a deontologist or unless you have some sort of universal ethic. Like, I don't know if Buddhists, for instance, I don't even know if that's really a religion or what, or maybe that is, or Confucianism. I don't remember which one, but I think you could have a religion that, maybe didn't care about hedonism at all. I'm not sure. I'm just saying that unless you have an ethical system, that's not based on hedonism, which you don't, you're a hedonist.
Well, my ethical system, like in one sentence, is don't cause harm to other people. Be a good force in the universe. That's not based on pleasure.
Yeah, but
it's sometimes you get way more pleasure from causing harm to other people.
What's the mechanism? How do you know if you're causing harm in the universe? It's because the consequence of the thing is bad, right? And the way that you judge the consequence is by X amount of people experiencing some sort of displeasure versus pleasure.
No, not necessarily. Sometimes you do something, there's no negative consequence. It's still bad. You can lie to your girlfriend. You can lie to your girlfriend, it causes no harm. You can cheat on your girlfriend. She never finds out.
Yeah, but you already told me that you can't justify why you think lying is bad. That's the problem. It's like, I think
it goes against my morals.
Yeah, but that's the problem, right? It's like, why is lying bad? If you had a moral system that would account for that, you would say lying is bad because of this moral, because this principle, which is justified by this thing.
This principle, which is don't lie to other people. Yeah.
Based on what? What's it based on? Just Alex made it up, right?
Right. That's no different than a Bible, which someone else made up.
So these aren't really principles. It's just like axioms that you came up with. You have an axiom that you shouldn't lie to people. But I think the way you judge that's based on hedonism.
But this is an axiom that you read somewhere else. Like, do you see how they're not different?
No, this is your axiom I'm talking about. This right now, you say lying is bad. That's an axiom that you have.
Sure.
So you think it's self-obvious that you shouldn't lie. It's an axiom that you.
I think it's pretty self-obvious. I think the vast majority of people would agree with that.
I think you're right. I agree with you that there's a lot of people out there who probably have that axiom, but that doesn't mean that you have a justified moral system for it. That's ridiculous.
But neither do you. Your justified moral system is, I read it in a book. Do you see how they're not any
No,
different?
that's not my justified moral system. My
So what's your
justified
justified
moral
moral
system operates off of a legitimate moral system called deontological Christian ethics. Just like utilitarianism would be a legitimate, grounded moral system, even though it's secular. Now,
So where do you
now,
get
as
the Christian
utilitarian could argue about which one is a better system, but we definitely have justifications for the system. You don't have
So
any. You just like make it up.
So where are the justifications? Like, where do you get them from? What's the original source for the justifications
From which system?
for your system?
From my system, it would come from God and the Bible, and then the principles
So
that were taught
something
by,
you read in a book,
and then from that, the principles which were taught by Jesus Christ.
but you never met Jesus Christ, so you're going off a book.
Yeah,
that
you don't
read.
need to. I'm simply giving you a justification.
But
That's
your
all I'm doing.
justification is exactly what I said, which is
You can
something
say
read
my
in a book.
justification is bad, but you can't
I'm not
say it's
saying
not
that.
a justification. Do you understand?
Yes, but it's just as absurd as my justification. If you want to
You
play
don't
that
have
game.
a justification.
My justification, your justification is it's something I read in a book. So do you think that if, for example, my parents wrote me,
Listen,
if my parents wrote me a book that said "Don't lie," would that be a valid justification for me?
no, Alex, listen it
But
one more
we're
time.
both
Stop,
having
just Alex,
justifications.
stop. Do you know what a justification is?
Do I know what justification
Yeah.
is? Yeah, a way of justifying something. Like
Well, you
explaining
can't
it,
use
maximizing it.
you can't use.
Yeah, are we
the-
playing the
dude.
definition again? Yeah.
All right, enough. I've had enough. You're
Enough.
just going in circles, dude.
Andrew Quinn, you guys heard it here. I'm just kidding. This was fun. At least this was more engaging than your debate with what's it called?
What's her
Farah.
name?
So Farah. So what were your overall thoughts that you couldn't say? Just give your overall perspective.
That chick's dumb as a box of rocks. She had no business debating with me. What were you thinking? Like, what were you thinking?
You really think she's dumb? I don't think she's dumb. I just think she wasn't like, well, I just don't think
All right,
she's
all right. Let me be maximum charitable. She seemed like a nice individual, but she'd never thought about any of this shit before.
I don't think she explored it nearly as much as you have. And I think you're a really good debater. And I think for someone who's not used to debating good debaters, it's definitely challenging to debate you. Like I remember the first time I debated you, I was caught off guard. It wasn't until like I watched back debates I had with you and I kind of started picking up on some things. So yeah, I think that I don't think that necessarily makes her dumb. I just think she's like not really that good at debating yet. My
Fair
perspective.
enough. I don't think. Well, I don't know. Let me revise it. Okay, maybe she's not dumb, but it seems like when you come to a debate and you're completely uninformed on the debate topic, in this case, feminism and what it means, that's the what else do you come away with, right? That's what you tend to come away with. It's like, why would you even debate this? You clearly have no idea what you're talking about. Just saying.
I mean, that's her thing, bro. She debates a lot of people.
Okay, fair enough.
I think
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Question for you. If you knew for a fact that an alcohol ban would cut crime in half by 50%, would you do it? Would you support it?
Probably not.
What's your logic? What's your reason?
Well, I think you're always trying to balance like net society good with what's it called, with liberty, right? And I'm just like, first of all, I think that statistic would be false, but okay, I'm assuming in your hypothetical, I know for a fact it's true. I just really don't like the idea of the government telling people what they can't put in their body, even if it cuts crime.
So you would do that with all drugs then, like across the board?
Yeah, I think most drugs should be legal. Sure.
So you think crack cocaine should be legal?
No, I think it should just be decriminalized. I wouldn't make the most addictive drugs illegal. I would make like weed, shrooms, acid, Molly probably illegal, and then I would make like heroin, crack, meth illegal. I mean, sorry, decriminalized.
So is there anything that's legal right now that you think is like bad for society that you would ban if you had?
Oh, there's a bunch of things. Well, no, that I would ban, or that I just think are bad for society.
That you think are bad for society that you would consider banning. You can at least see the logic in banning it.
Well, I can see the logic for banning all of the things. I can see the logic for banning pornography and alcohol. I understand the logic. You're maximizing net good. for society, right? Which I understand. It's a reasonable argument. It's just that it depends which one of those is more important to you, which is liberty or net good for society. I tend to lean a little bit more on that side of the direction. But obviously, if there was like a virus that caused like a 98% like mortality rate, then my position on lockdowns would change.
Right.
You know what I mean? So at some point, it gets to a point where it's like, okay, even though this like hurts liberty, I think the net good is worth it. It's just where that point is different for different people. Is there anything that I think that is legal now that I would consider making illegal? Uh, mm, I would say not on an individual level, but I'm not a fan of like some of the laws that have been changed to allow companies to like pollute in environments. So that's what I would probably make illegal. That happened, I think, in the last 6 or 7 years. So yeah, it would be more of like corporate stuff, not like really what's it called on a personal level.
This is interesting. So if you were the dictator of the United States of America, there is
Which
not one vice or addiction that you would outlaw.
Um, no, I think I would approach it more from a mental health perspective, where I would, instead of trying to fight a drug war, I would focus on rehabilitation and prevention. I think that, what's it called, with, I don't know, something like pornography, again, I would focus on education and like teaching people why it's not a good idea rather than, make it outright illegal. I believe people should be, generally speaking, given the right to make up their own decisions when it comes to most things.
Okay, so virtual reality porn is going to be coming out soon. Would you keep the same position if it turns out virtual reality porn is like 100
Yeah.
times more addictive than regular porn right now?
Yeah, I would probably give a lot of warnings about that. I mean, I'm even in favor of like what they did with cigarettes, where they give like warnings on the packages. I'm totally cool with like the government regulating that. Hey, before you go on a porn site, there's like a pop up that pops up. Hey, this has been known to be bad for you. Blah blah blah. So I'm okay with that. But in terms of outright banning, no, there's nothing. And VR porn already exists, according to most of the chat.
Okay.
All right, cool. All right, fun debate. I think the next step is going to be you versus Nina. Andrew, what do you think about that?
Andrew, you're muted.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
I'm not sure she'll want to go another round with me, but sure, I don't care.
Let me see if I can make it happen. Actually,
Okay,
You
here's
got one coming up on Wednesday, so we're all good.
yeah.
To
I
go
still,
there.
I still don't really know who I'm debating though.
Yeah, send over as much info as I can. He has a channel, so you can check him out.
Okay, what does he like disagree with me on, like roughly speaking?
He disagrees on your hedonism, Alex.
Back to the hedonism. Okay, is he kind of like you? Is he like religious, Christian?
Yeah, of course he is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Crucible's full of us evil Christians who your audience tends to support when we're destroying the feminists, but then hates us when we say things like, also, you probably shouldn't coom, right? That's the problem is like, they were like, yeah, get that feminist destroyer. And I do. But then I'm like, but also you shouldn't coom. And they're like, fucking bastard.
Well, I don't think you guys are evil. I don't think there's anything wrong with being religious at all.
is this question supposed to be for me because I brought up virtual reality porn?
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't ban all artificial intelligence, but you have to be extremely careful. I wouldn't use it for pornography. I mean, I would ban that virtual reality pornography. I would ban regular pornography. So of course, but I do want to
Okay.
ask Alex something. I want to ask you this and see if you see like a logical contradiction in this. So there was a certain figure on the right, libertarian Christian, right wing figure, and I am a fan of him, but I do disagree with him because I see some potential hypocrisy in the statement. He starts off by saying he believes every human being is a child of God, our brothers and sisters, and children of God. So he cares about every human being because of that. Then he goes on to say there's a certain surgery that if you have it, you're way more likely to commit suicide, have mental health problems, have depression, have a difficult life. This surgery can basically ruin your life. But then he goes on to say, oh, but I'm a libertarian. So as soon as you turn 18, you should be able to go have that surgery. So in essence, he's saying that he cares about everyone, but wants to give them the freedom, quote unquote, freedom to have a surgery that will ruin their life and cause them to commit suicide. Do you see a logical contradiction in that?
No, because he's on the scale of liberty versus not good. He's further on the liberty scale. So he's like, yeah, this is not good, but I think a person's right to liberty outweighs that. I have exactly the same position. I think gender transition surgery is not a good thing. I would never advocate for a thing. I think it's a bad thing. That being said, I don't think it should be illegal once you're 18 because, again, my desire for liberty outweighs my desire for like net good for society.
That's an interesting statement. So you value liberty even if it's bad for society.
Yes, I think liberty to me is probably, well, it depends to degrees. How bad society is it? Like if it just turned out that 99% of people who were doing the gender transition surgery were dying, then that might be different. But yeah,
not really liberty, right? That's not really dude. That's not really what you want, is liberty and freedom. You want limits on all liberty and all freedom. So you just want you just want your brand. Okay, well, let's go through it then.
I thought we're quick this debate. You want to go back?
Let's start with freedom of speech. Do you want any limits on that?
I think that you shouldn't be able to incite violence, but that's about it.
That's all? Just inciting violence? Should you have the freedom to publish documents that would put soldiers in harm's way overseas?
Well, that's only an issue because when you join, so you can actually do that, but it's only if you are part of the military, then you sign a agreement saying that you wouldn't do that. No. So that more has to do with
what if they're top secret? What if they're top secret documents? You're not part of the military. Should you be able to publish them then? Because you have freedom of speech?
Well, you are able to actually do that as long as you weren't.
No, you're not. No, you're not. And people have gotten thrown in prison for publishing top secret information who aren't part of the military.
No, and like also, New York Times has published like multiple like top secret shit.
No, they have reported on other people who have. That's how media is able. That's how media is able to get away with it. How about slander? Should you be able to just have unlimited slander against somebody, or should they have recourse for that?
Well, we're talking the difference between civil and criminal. It should be criminally. I don't think you should get in trouble for slander, but civilly, that's different. People should be able to. Well,
then that's a restriction on speech, right?
It's a civil restriction, not criminal.
Yeah, but
it's
still a restriction on speech. So I mean, I can. I can keep on going. Do you think? Yeah, exactly. Every one of these supposed freedoms that you're for, right? I'll be able to introduce tons and tons of limits. You're not really for freedom. You're just for whatever you think society should be. So when you say liberty is my highest value, you actually just mean is like, the things that I value is what I'm for, not freedom, because you don't really value freedom.
Do you think I value alcohol and cigarettes?
I don't know. Maybe alcohol. I've never seen you smoke. But
I don't drink. Why would
I don't know. I have no access to that knowledge. So I just said maybe.
Why am I in defense of keeping cigarettes and alcohol legal if I don't value them? And I think they're frankly kind of gross.
Because you think that in order to be logically consistent, that if you devalue those things, would have to bite bullets on things that you do value. So you're saying it's okay for society to have those things as long as the Coomer things that I like are also legal in order to be consistent. That's why I think you value them.
What are the Coomer things I like? I don't.
No, porn. Like fucking porn and
I don't watch porn.
Well, let's say open marriages. Let's say no fault divorce. Let's say all kinds of different.
I'm not married. I'm not pro marriage either.
Yeah, I get it. I'm just giving you all the things. But all those examples are fair.
Most of the things I defend are not things that I value at all.
You wait a second. You don't. So, do you want to get rid of no fault divorce?
Do you want to get rid of no fault divorce?
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Okay, well then you must value it then. So what are you talking about?
No, I just think that it's in the greater good of freedom.
So you value it.
No, I don't value.
What do you mean
cigarettes. No? You can want something to be legal and not value it at the same time. I don't value cigarettes, but I think it should be legal. I value freedom and liberty.
So hang on, just to get this right.
This philosophy breaks down.
There is no contradiction here between you saying you don't value no fault divorce and freedom and liberty. There's no contradiction there.
No, I'm
So
saying
you can still say that you need to have a justified divorce and still be for freedom and liberty.
Do you think that you can be in favor of keeping something legal but not value it at the same time?
I mean, sure. There's no
Depends.
entailment. Hang on.
Which is exactly what my
There's
position
no
is.
entailment of a contradiction, but that really is beside the point. The point is that it's not liberty and freedom that you value, because that's a subjective term. What you think is liberty, another person who wants to publish top secret documents might think you're obstructing his liberty, for instance, right? So you don't hang on. If you want common sense gun control, you're obstructing somebody's liberty, right? If that's what you call it, right? Common sense gun control or whatever, you're obstructing on somebody's liberty. So you're like, no, we can't have unlimited liberty. So you're really just for whatever your form of liberty is.
And Alex, can I say real quick?
Okay. So hang on. I'm going to respond to that.
Okay,
so yeah, I've never claimed to be 100% freedom libertarian. I think that it's a scale, right? And with certain things, right, like the net societal good overweighs my desire for liberty. So for example, something like owning a bazooka, that it would be nice in theory. People could have bazookas, right?
Sure.
But the harm from that is so bad that I'm willing to override my desire for freedom, right? So it's a scale. But I'm definitely further along on the scale of freedom and liberty than you are. You're much more closer to net good. So it's not just about things that I value. I don't watch porn. I don't smoke cigarettes. I don't drink alcohol. The reason that I think they should be legal is, again, because of the net impact. I think that is not as bad as fucking owning a bazooka, which can directly kill someone else. So it's not just
Alex.
It's not just cherry picking things that
you're not attacking. You're not even attacking anything I'm saying.
Half the things.
Are you going to actually attack what I'm saying or not?
Half the things that I think should be legal, I don't actually value. What exactly are you trying to ask?
One more time, I'm just saying that the standards of freedom that you have are actually just arbitrary standards.
That's not a question. That's a statement.
No, yeah, well, I did ask you a question about it, though, and you went in this rambling diatribe.
My response is I disagree.
Okay, so what are the standards for your freedom, then, that are based on something else other than you?
They're based on the principle of not caught, not hurting other people.
Those aren't your principles. Those are somebody else's principles you adopted.
That's so vague. That's so vague.
Well, religion is not your principle. It's something you adopted.
Never said that it wasn't. But in this particular case, hang on. In this particular case, so you have a subjectivist.
I never claimed that I invented the idea of liberty and freedom.
Yeah, no, I understand, but I just need you to admit this fundamental thing. You actually don't even get hurt by admitting it. It's a problem you people have when you don't even understand what's being said to you. This doesn't hurt you to say this. You believe in a subjective form of freedom that is tailored to what Alex thinks freedom is, not what freedom is, because people have completely varying definitions of what they think freedom is and freedom isn't. So you're really just going off of standards that you like, that are your preference. You say, I value freedom, but you don't really value freedom. You value what you think is the proper form of freedom, the right amount of freedom for people, right? That's really what's going on, isn't it?
So if the answer for me is yes, then the answer is yes for you. Because it's just things that you value. You value Christianity. It sounds pretty good to you, right? Other people don't value it. So you think that, oh, well, in Christianity, it says this and this and this. And there's Christian people, for
Alex,
example.
Even if all of that's true, and even if I said yes, why have you been trying to duck this and evade from it for a half hour because you don't understand it? Just say yes, that's true, Andrew.
So I will say, yes, we both value things that are things that make sense to us. Sure. Mm-hmm. Me and you both.
No, not you and I both. Because I value things external to my own devices, and you don't.
What does that mean, external to your own devices?
It means that I follow values that me, without that value system, may not value external of that. So, like, let's take forgiveness, for instance, right? Forgiving a person who has, like, murdered your whole family. That's something that my religion requires me to do. Right. And forgiveness for me is really fucking hard. And in many ways, I actually hate doing it. I loathe it. I'm like, it's the last thing I want to do is ask a person to forgive me who wronged me. Right. But it's part of my religious structure to do so. Yeah. So the thing is like, You, on the other hand, you don't have any of those preambles because everything just comes out of your own brain,
No,
right?
being
Just subjective.
being empathetic and doing nice things for people is also something that doesn't come naturally to me. It's something I had to develop because that goes in line with my values. I think you should do good to other people.
Yeah, but
do
your
good.
values aren't, again, your values for even freedom are just arbitrary values. They're just
So are yours.
no, mine aren't arbitrary. They're justified. You don't know what justified means.
They're justified by a 2,000-year-old book.
Whatever they're justified by, they're fucking justified, and yours aren't.
Okay, and mine are justified by what my parents taught me. There's
Yours
no
are
difference.
only justified out of your own brain.
No, they're
You think
justified.
that the ultimate in moral arbitration is your own fucking brain. That's
So
what
if my
you think.
parents wait, hang on. If my parents wrote me a book when I was born that says, here are the values you should follow. So would that be justified then?
Bro,
You
you're
would at
comparing
least-
your parents to Jesus
First of
Christ.
all, you would at least.
Well, yeah, I'm comparing
Hang on,
people who
Alex.
exist to a fictional
No,
character.
no, it wouldn't be a form of justification
Blasphemy, bro.
unless you were able to explain the justification. But even let's just grant that it was, right? That it was, and I could just attack that justification and show that you don't really believe that. I think that that's fair to do. In your case, though, I need you to understand what you're saying to everybody. What Alex PWF is saying to everybody right now is the ultimate form of moral arbitration comes out of your brain. Alex's brain is the ultimate moral arbiter, period. And all of society should follow the suit of his preferences because he's the ultimate moral arbiter.
I'm not saying that. I'm not making.
Who else is besides you?
I'm not a legislator. Am I making prescriptions?
Yeah, but who else is a moral arbiter besides you?
Yeah,
You don't
just
think
like
anybody
we're the
can
same-
be
we're the
a
same
moral
guys.
arbiter?
We're the same exact thing. I get my values from I don't know my upbringing, books I read, my family, my parents. You get your morals from a 2,000-year-old book, right? We're not that different.
Bro, one more time. Who's the arbiter of what is moral if it's not you?
Well, who's the arbitrator in your situation?
Just answer my question and stop pivoting. I'll answer yours after you answer mine, Alex. Who is it? Who? Alex. Then answer my fucking question, dude.
Yeah, I'm the one that decides.
Stop running.
I'm not running. You're the one.
You keep. Well, here's what you do. I ask you a question.
You quit this debate and then you
hang on. Here's what happens. You go. I ask you a question and you go, well, you answer that question. Then I ask you another question. You go, well, you answer that question. Just answer my fucking question. Who's the ultimate moral arbiter for Alex other than your own brain?
It is my brain, just like it is for you.
It is your brain. So that your brain is what you believe is the ultimate moral arbiter, but not just for you.
Just like it is for you. Yeah.
You think it is for everybody. So you think everybody should follow your preferences of your brain, right?
I'm not making prescriptions. I'm not a governor. I'm not a legislator. I'm not.
But you think you're moral, right?
Yeah, everyone does. You think you're moral too.
If you know, everybody doesn't think they're moral. That's one falsehood you just said. But secondly,
do you not think you're moral?
I think I've done plenty of immoral things. I think I try my hardest and I constantly fall short.
You think generally you're moral?
It's not even for me to judge whether or not I'm moral. But again, you're asking me questions. You're asking me one more time. Just ask me the same question I asked you.
Is it just going to be like an interrogation of me, or can I ask you questions? Some point?
You can, but answer mine first, then ask me.
I've already answered your question like 5 times.
Yeah, but I asked you a different question.
What is your different question? It's all.
Well, I'll ask you again. Since you are the ultimate arbitrator of what all things are that are moral in Alex's world, and you think you're moral, why wouldn't what's in Alex's world be moral for everybody?
Because people have different moralities.
So then, if their moralities don't match up with yours, how do you determine which one of you is moral?
I mean, I think sometimes you can go off what. You can go off certain principles, like whether there's harm to society, but sometimes with certain things that are subtle, you can't get to an answer, right? It's no different. I want to keep bringing this back. It's no different for you. It is
different for me.
Now
we can draw the delineation.
Hang on. Yeah. There's different sets of Christianity that disagree on different shit. Which one of them is right?
So one more time, especially when it comes to Christian virtues and ethics, there's not that much disagreement on how you're supposed to live. Most of the disagreements are based around theology and sacraments. So yes, there are distinctions, but the ethical system doesn't vary much, to be perfectly honest with you. But moving. So hang on, I'm going to give you the delineation point. The delineation point is that I can say that the moral system that I advocate for is the correct moral system for everybody. The difference between you and I is that you say the moral system that you came up with out of your brain, which is the most moral system, according to you, is not right for everybody else. That's called cognitive dissonance.
No, that's like, unlike being an annoying Christian, I don't feel like the need to push my values on other people. You're saying that this system that I read in
You said you're the
2000-year-old book,
ultimate arbiter of morality. What are you
right?
talking about?
But I don't push my morals on other people. That's the thing.
Then how are you the ultimate arbiter of what's moral?
Because I can think that what other people are doing are wrong without pushing my values onto them. Do you not
But
see
hold
that?
on, Alex.
Then
But
if
hold
they're
on,
doing
Alex.
anything if they're
Well,
doing
wait,
anything
wait.
then contrary to those values, they're being immoral, Alex.
Wait, could I just point out the absurdity of someone who read something in a 2000-year-old book based on some dude that he's never met, right? Saying that my system, which is based on life experiences and the experiences of my family and parents and reading I've done and philosophy I've studied, is somehow more arbitrary than his. I mean, like, they're
Alex,
You
both like,
said that
can I
you're
respond?
you said that you're the ultimate arbiter of what's moral, and all morality comes out of your brain. And then you said that other people can act in an immoral way based on their moral preferences, but they're not being immoral. That's cognitive dissonance. That
no,
doesn't make any sense.
My man, I can think they're immoral, but they think they are moral, right? Do you see that two people can think
Yeah,
differently?
but you just said that there's other people who follow moral systems that you don't think are immoral. But if they're doing anything contrary to anything you would normally do, you'd have to call them immoral.
I would think, yes, I would call them immoral, right? But that doesn't mean I would push my morals onto them.
Hey, can I
Do you not see
respond?
how
So let
this-
me
Can
ask
I
you a
respond to
question.
Alex
Hang on.
real
So
quick?
You're
let
just
me
gonna
tell
be
you,
like-
I'm going to
Let
show
me
you how
respond after
absurd
this
this is, where this leads you, Alex. I'm going to show you how
Okay,
absurd this is.
Go ahead.
You told me in a debate that you thought it was perfectly moral to fuck people's wives. By what you just
I never said that.
Yes, you did. You said
I
you've done it yourself.
Yeah, I've done it myself. I don't think it's moral.
So why would you do immoral shit?
Why would you do immoral shit? You just admitted to that 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, but I don't try to. You said you would still do
I don't
it.
try to. I don't
You
try to
said you
either.
would still do it. You said
No,
you
I-
would still do it. Those were your
I mean,
exact
I
words.
haven't fucked another person's wife.
Yeah,
with my
but you
fucking-
don't think it's immoral to do, right?
No, I think it is immoral. I don't think you should do it.
But you can do it.
No, I should not do it.
So
There's a chance.
okay.
There's a chance.
But why
Dude,
did you say the last time we debated then that you think it's perfectly acceptable to have sex with a married woman?
I
Why
don't
would you
believe
say
I've
that?
ever- No, I don't believe I've ever said that.
Yeah, you
I
said
think
that.
Pull up the clip.
I mean, we pushed you on it. Me and Zen pushed you on
Well,
it hard.
Pull up the clip.
Well, how
my
the
man.
fuck am I? Well, yeah, let me go find it real quick.
Oh,
Alex
so
had
so
hundreds
so
of
I'm
videos.
supposed to remember some random shit from 3 years ago that you can't even.
It wasn't 2 years ago.
Okay,
Wasn't
year and a
too,
half
but let
ago.
me use a different
So wait, if
example.
it's something I'm
Hang
supposed
on,
to
let me
remember,
use a different example.
Okay.
Do you think polygamous relationships are okay?
In what sense? Do I think they're
An
amoral?
open polygamous relationship, that's what's moral, right?
I don't think they're amoral. No.
Right, they're not immoral. So that would mean if somebody else had an open polygamous relationship, right? You think that they're acting in a moral way, correct?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure. So that would mean then the consequence of that is that if you weren't in one, you would say that that's immoral, right?
No, you can think
No?
that something is moral and not do it. Wait, are you saying that there's a level of like preferences? They're like, this is like saying that like, oh, I prefer big titty Latinas, so therefore it's immoral if someone is dating a tall blonde.
So when we hang on. So when we get to the heart, when we get to the heart of it, you're not actually the ultimate arbiter of what's moral inside of your own worldview, actually, right? Because if somebody was acting in a way that you weren't acting, you wouldn't say that they're immoral after all.
Some people can be acting in a way that I'm not acting and still be moral. Like
Right.
For example,
the delineating factor between you and I is I think everybody who acts outside of the system is acting immorally, and you don't.
I know this cringy tactic of just talking over people works with fire. It's not going to work with me. Okay, so the point I'm making is that, for
Yes,
example,
it'll work with you just fine. No, Alex, it'll work just fine. Alex, it'll work fine. Alex,
I
it'll
take
be
back
fine,
what I
Alex.
said. I
It'll
take
be
back
fine,
what I
Alex.
said about you being more respectful and polite. You're going back to your old douchebag ways. The point I'm making is that, for example,
Well, don't
I
try
stream.
to
Stop
take shots. Don't
interrupting.
try to
dude.
take shots.
Stop interrupting. Stop interrupting. The point I'm making is I stream like 3-4 hours a day, right? But just because someone else doesn't stream, someone else, for example, paints, they do something different than me, but they're not amoral. Are you not following my
Sure,
logic?
you can say that that's morally neutral. I would agree, but I asked you specifically if something was a moral action, and you said yes, and that would mean that everybody ought to follow that action because it's moral, right?
No, I just said I don't think it's amoral.
You know, I asked you
I
specifically.
don't think it's good.
Back the VOD up. Back the VOD up.
I think
was
it's neutral. Okay, I said it's not amoral.
You said it's a moral action.
No, I said it's not amoral.
No, you said it. I qualified it, and you said it's a
Okay, so
moral
let
action.
me clarify. I don't think it's good or bad. I think it's neutral.
Okay, and does that just work with anybody else's belief structure in a normative sense if it's not directly mapped on? So it's all just a matter of preferences, basically. That's your whole moral system, just preferences. No,
Just with certain things.
just with
Yeah, of course, there's moral and amoral things. Like killing is amoral.
Mm-hmm.
Being a good father is
well,
moral.
no, immoral, not amoral. Killing would be immoral, right?
Yeah, immoral. Killing is immoral. Being a good father
Oh,
is
I'm
moral.
sorry. You pronounced it. It was the pronunciation that fucked me up.
Okay,
But that's my bad. My bad.
You're okay. But so yeah, so there's many things that in my worldview are moral and immoral.
Yeah,
But
no,
there's also,
I understand that.
There's also some things that are preferences. Like, do you think it's moral or immoral for someone to stream 3 hours a day? Like, you're probably neutral on it.
Yeah, I don't
Do you
care.
think it's moral or immoral for someone to go travel?
Depends on what they're streaming. Depends on what they're
Do you
streaming.
think it's moral or immoral for people to travel or to go hiking?
Totally neutral on all those things.
Yeah, exactly. Same as me.
I already told you that having a morally neutral position on something is fine, but this kind of begs the question as the ultimate arbiter of what is moral. Everything which is moral now is just derides on your own personal preferences. So anybody acts outside of your own personal preferences, you believe is acting in an immoral way. You have to. There's no way around that.
I have a million preferences that I don't think are immoral. I think my preference is, for example, not to go out to eat. I like to cook at home. I don't think it's immoral for people to go out to eat. Like, I can give you examples like that. I'm going
to try this again, the best way that I possibly can. Are you going to get married someday?
I might. I don't know.
Maybe. Okay, maybe. Are you just morally neutral on marriage?
Yeah, I think that, yeah, some people should. Yeah, I don't think it's a good or bad thing. I think it's neutral.
Are you morally neutral on lying?
On lying?
Yeah.
No, I'm not.
Okay, so is telling a lie always bad?
There's probably some exceptions. If you're doing it to save a person's life, I would say is okay then. But generally speaking, yeah.
Well, I don't know what that means. Is lying acceptable or unacceptable?
There's exceptions to every rule. So, for example, if you were staying in my house and you're about to commit suicide because you thought something, and if I lied to you in that situation to keep you from killing yourself, then I would say that's probably immoral, right? But generally speaking, lying is immoral.
I mean, that seems reasonable, right? That seems reasonable to say. But let me ask you this: if somebody else told you that was an immoral action, would you say that they're incorrect? That it was immoral for you to lie even to save a life?
Yeah, I would disagree with them.
So you would say that they're incorrect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you would still say that lying is bad, right?
Yeah, there's qualifiers.
Yeah, you're just going to make exceptions for them. But why couldn't you say that both are
bad?
Wait,
Andrew, do you think murder is bad?
Well, listen to what I'm saying. Why wouldn't you just say both are bad? Why wouldn't you just say both are bad? That telling the lie was bad, but also the murder was something that's even worser. So both are bad. Both of those actions are incorrect.
No, I think if your motivation was to save a person's life, that doesn't make it bad. Do you think Andrew? Do you think murder is
just
bad?
Motivation?
Do you think murder?
Then the entailment of the word murder is bad. It has to be because murder is an unjustified killing.
Okay. Do you think killing another person is bad?
No.
Okay. So you think that sometimes it's okay and sometimes it's not okay?
Of course.
Okay. Same as lying with me.
Yeah, there's justifications, but you have to understand what I'm saying to you is that there's justifications. My question to you wasn't whether or not I told you it was totally reasonable to say you would lie to save a life. I'm just asking you this question. Why couldn't you say both of those actions are wrong? It's wrong to lie and it's wrong to, come in and try to kill somebody. They're both wrong actions. And you did take a wrong action, but you just thought that the wrong action you took was for a greater good, but you still think that the action you took was immoral.
No, because I think in that situation, you're morally justified to lie. So I don't think it's like you did something bad, even to a small iota, by lying. Just like you probably don't think you did something bad by taking another person's life who was trying to murder your wife and children.
No, I would say, well, that wouldn't be an unjustified killing. That would be a justified killing. But let's say, let's say an unjustified, an actual murder, right? Let's say, for instance, somebody came in and I lied to them about the location of somebody to save that person's life. Still say that the lie that I told was immoral. All right. But I did tell the lie, and I do think that the good outweighs it. Right. I would still repent for the lie. I'd still say that it's an immoral action, because the problem is if you don't take that line, that stance, like what you have here, Alex, is you'll end up with endless micro justifications for these things. So
there's
for instance, is it okay to lie to a woman and tell her she's pretty when she's not, even if, just because it makes her feel good? Is that okay to do?
Well, there's degrees of it. Like, that's obviously worse than lying to save someone's life, but a lot better than lying for your selfish gain. So there's degrees of morality always.
There's really just specific lies, really, is what all you're interested in. Not really lies. It's just there's specific lies only in specific situations.
Yeah, you're only
Those are
interested in
what you're
specific.
against.
You're only interested in specific killings. Like, see, every single
Only
argument you make,
ones that are unjustified.
every single argument you make against me applies to yourself too.
No, in this case, it doesn't apply to me because I'm a deontologist. I'm trying to actually make that point because I see this tactic. I see this tactic you're trying to do where every question I ask, you just try to ask the question. So I made sure this time to ask you the correct question so that you would ask me what I wanted to know. No, we're not the
80%
same.
of this conversation has
Alex,
been like
some guy's asking to come on. He says he's
like, I think
gonna wreck
how
you.
debate works is that I'm allowed to ask questions back.
And I've been answering every one of them that you've
And I've
asked.
been answering your questions
So
too.
one more time, moving back into this, you're
What's your
really saying that all that lies themselves are not bad. What you're taking into account then ultimately is what you think the consequences will be. So it's really okay to lie just based on if the consequence of the lie is what you perceive to be a good consequence.
Because because you can lie to someone and there's no negative consequence, still wrong. Like if I lied to my girlfriend about the fact that I cheated on her, even if there's no consequences at all, it was still wrong. If I lied because I'm embarrassed about something because I stole from you, it's still wrong, even though there's no negative consequences.
Why is that wrong?
It's not just based on consequentialism. Yeah. There's also other underlying philosophy. But for every rule, there's an exception. So generally speaking, stop, don't interrupt. For every rule, there's an exception. So generally speaking, lying is wrong. However, there's some exceptions to that, just like there is for killing, just like there is for theft. There's exceptions to every rule. So the fact that you found a few exceptions to my lying is wrong morality stance doesn't mean that it's not true, because there's exceptions for every rule.
Fine, Alex, nobody says there's not exceptions for every rule even, but let me try this one more time. Okay. This is super fucking important. You say that you can have a neutral lie that has no consequences whatsoever and you still wouldn't tell it. That's where my interest peaked before and where it's peaked now. I want to know why you wouldn't tell that lie without any justification for why it would be good, bad, or otherwise. Why? It's just a preference?
Because I think that's morally wrong.
Based on
my own moral standards.
Based on
my own moral standards. What do you mean?
They're just based
on my upbringing, based on my DNA, based on my experiences, based on the books I've read, based on the people I've interacted with. Like, what do you mean?
So you have no actual justification whatsoever for why you think it would be a bad or a neutral action even to or bad action in your case to tell a woman a white lie. You don't actually have a single justification for why that's bad, not one.
What justification do I have why it's bad? Well, I don't think everything needs a justification. Sometimes you're just going against your morality. Yeah, but not everything needs to be justified with some.
Your morality has to be justified. Yeah, that has to be justified.
Your morality is not justified, or I guess it is justified. It's just justified in a really shitty way.
Yeah, you just don't like the justification. That's fine. You go after the justification, but you don't have even a justification. You don't have anything.
My justification is my life experiences, the upbringing I had, the books I read. That's my justification. Your justification is a book you read from 2,000 years ago.
So then anybody's justified in anything they do because of their life experience?
No.
I
think that my life experiences, like, obviously I think that my moral system is correct. Otherwise I wouldn't have it. And you think your moral system is correct. Otherwise you wouldn't have it.
Yeah. Well, I have a justification. You don't have anything.
But your justification is a 2,000-year-old book.
Yeah, you might not like the justification, but there's a fucking justification. You don't have anything. Nothing.
Okay, fine.
I think what Andrew.
I would rather take fine. If I would rather take a justification of it's what my parents taught me rather than it's something I read in a 2,000-year-old book. So here we go. My justification.
So you don't have any reason why you think it's right.
My justification is that's what my family taught me.
You don't have any reason why you think that that's right. None.
You don't have any reason to think why 2,000-year-old?
No, I do. I have tons of reasons to think that that's right, but you don't have a single one because I have a belief that there's a God and that there's a logical, empirical way to do it. But you don't believe any of that.
I have belief that my parents are really good judges of character and they know everything. They know what's best for me.
So now the ultimate moral arbiters are your parents.
I'm just trying to make a point to show you how ridiculous your logic is.
My logic's not ridiculous. This is basic stuff.
Your justification is a 2,000-year-old book. My
You
justification.
might hate my
is-
justification, but I
I
have
don't
one.
hate it. I don't care about it. I just think it's absurd. But my
we don't even
it's
have one.
absurd for you to attack my justification.
You
Alex,
don't
do you
have a
think-
justification.
Alex,
There's
do you
nothing to
think it's
attack.
absurd
My
based on what?
justification is my life experiences. My justification is what my family taught me. My justification is the books I've read. My justification is probably partially because of my DNA and whatnot. That's my justification.
None of those are justifications.
It's multifaceted. Your justification is a 2,000-year-old book.
You don't have. You just admitted multiple times you have no justification. So what you hold is an unjustified belief, literally an unjustified belief, Alex. You should reject it immediately because it's unjustified.
So, well, I just gave you like the justifications like 5 times. Like,
so you honestly only believe that it's incorrect to tell a lie because your parents told you to. Lie to me. Go ahead, lie to me right now, Alex, and say that that's the reason why. Go ahead.
You think it's incorrect to tell a lie just because you read
lie to me right now and tell me.
You see how your logic is just like really absurd?
No, my logic is perfect. Lie to me real quick and tell me that the only reason you think it's wrong to lie is because your parents told you so. Go ahead.
Okay, let me try to tell you a good lie. I think that Christianity is.
Why won't you? You said it came from your parents, Alex.
Yeah, my parents taught me that getting your morality from.
You don't believe that your justification for not lying is because your parents told you not to lie. That's ridiculous. You don't really believe that, do you?
It was one of the many reasons I've listed.
And
it doesn't just come from one source. It doesn't just come from one source.
What are the other sources?
I told you that
your life experience.
I've told you my sources like 5 times.
So somebody else told you not to lie, and so that's your justification. I don't believe that you only believe it's immoral to lie because somebody told you one time it wasn't correct to lie. That's absurd.
You're so bad faith, dude. It's not even funny.
How is this bad faith? This is just basic logic.
Because I've given you the reasons of why I believe.
Do you think that just saying somebody's bad faith means they are?
Dude, there's a reason why like most people think you're bad faith. The justification I've given you.
Nobody thinks I'm bad faith.
Every single person
dumb coomers who get wrecked in debates because they can't debate because they don't know logic.
You're the one that's getting triggered as fuck right now.
Why don't you tell me a single person who you think has called me bad faith, Alex, since you made the allegation?
Not so erudite. Destiny.
Yeah. Destiny never called me bad faith. When?
Well, not publicly.
When?
When? I don't know. During conversation him and I had.
He said I was bad faith.
Yeah, I think I was trying to set up a debate between you and him, and
not so erudite said I was bad faith.
I don't know if he used the word bad faith, to be fair, but he did say.
Now you don't know.
He doesn't want to debate you. Well, why don't you pull up this screen recording, Andrew, when I said that one thing? Like, see, the funny thing is that you make attacks that you then can't answer when they're flipped.
I answered each.
I've
answered each one of your questions. I made sure to do so.
Your tactic is just to literally just constantly go on the defensive and then deflect whenever things are like pressed towards you.
Answer what question do you think I haven't answered?
How is what you believe when it comes to morality different than what I believe?
Well,
how is your justification? How's your justification more reasonable than my justification?
Because I have one. We'll just start with that.
I have one too.
Yeah, nice. but each time I look at one of those justifications, you are actually not telling me the truth about that justification. So like you lied and said the only reason that you think that telling lies is bad is because your parents told you.
That's never what I said. I was trying to give you an analogy. See,
is that an untrue? So then what is it?
This is the reason I think you're bad faith, because you know what my position is and you keep misinterpreting it over and over again.
Well, I don't think you're being honest. I think that you're telling the truth at first. And you said, I don't have a justification. That I believe. And then what you did, you're actually the one being bad faith because you're telling me things that aren't true. And then you want me to respond to them so that you can then attack Christianity, which is fine. You can attack Christianity.
I don't care about Christianity. I don't care
But I'll tell you why I have a true belief if you want. I have a true belief in Christianity due to presuppositionalism and understanding that the laws of logic and things like this aren't possible without a God. That's why I have that true belief and think it's a true belief. That's where my justification comes from.
How are the laws of logic not possible without a God?
Well, because they're discovered. They're laws, right?
They're discovered. Yeah. Why do you need a God for that?
Let me ask you a question then.
Well, you're going to say my question?
No, I'm not flipping it on you. This is how
Wait, Alex,
well, here, I'll answer it without the Socratic method for you then, if that makes you feel better. It's actually simple. Okay. If you have, and you agree that we have the laws of logic, right? And do you believe that absent everybody on planet Earth existing, that the laws of logic still would exist?
Are you just going to ask me questions or are you going to answer my question?
Well, so the answer to the question is that absent all humanity, the laws of logic would still exist. That shouldn't actually be possible. Why would that be possible, Alex? How could immaterial laws, which you can't see, taste, touch, smell, nothing, exist absent human beings? That's bizarre. It makes no sense, but yet they still would.
So what does God have to do with any of this?
Well, because if they exist, they have a creator.
No, they don't. They might have just come from just physics and the way the world works.
Well, physics would point and indicate the material. These are immaterial.
Right. There's things
Physics
about
can't
physics.
physics can't give an accounting for immaterial or spiritual or things that don't account for materialism. Only materialism can do that. So
there's laws that come from there's a bunch of laws that come from nature.
Those are all physical laws that require physical elements that are material, and you can even see the effects of them. The laws of logic are immaterial. Or take math and numbers, for instance. You can't point to the number 7, but the value of 1 + 1 = 2 isn't going to change regardless of if humans know that or don't know it. These are laws which are discovered that are immaterial laws.
Well, if you take the whole thing, dude, if you take 1 cup of coffee and you add another cup of coffee, you have 2 cups of coffee. Are you saying that's because of God?
I'm saying that the accounting for this, can you envision any other way that 1 + 1 could equal 3? Could that even be possible?
Well, if you take 1 cup of coffee and you get another cup of coffee, then no, it cannot equal 3 cups of coffee.
Right. It can't exist. However, this is not, because this is not a material concept. It's immaterial. It's metaphysical. It transcends materialism. So these are called transcendentals. And if you look at transcendentals and the transcendental argument for God, you can pull it up real quick. You'll understand that there's a huge amount and body of evidence for God inside of philosophy. And this is called TAG, transcendental argumentation. Understand that there's an entire immaterial world that you live by, and you operate in that material world as if there's a God, even while rejecting a God, like the laws of logic, which you agree are immutable.
Right. Why is it that the vast majority of people, even non-religious ones, think that murder is wrong? That's not a physics thing.
I think that you can intuitively reason out these types of things, yes, and that this is additional proof of the transcendentals.
Well, you can intuitively reason out if you take 1 cup of coffee and another one, you have 2 cups of coffee. It all stems from that.
You can't intuitively reason out, though, why that's the case. Why it's the case that that's immutable, that that's unchangeable, and that it's immaterial. The concept of it doesn't exist, right? But yet it's still a law. Same thing with the laws of logic. They don't exist, Alex, yet you have to abide by them. They had to have a creator. They're discovered. They're not made.
Yeah, I'm just not seeing your argument. I understand the point you're trying to make about how they're constant. I just don't know what that has to do with God. Like why it has to come from God. It could come from any number of things.
What?
It always has to come from a God. Where did God come from?
God didn't come from anything. God exists outside of time and space.
How long has he existed for?
Always.
But well, I thought time was finite.
Time, not if you exist outside of it.
Okay,
then it wouldn't be finite.
God has just always been around forever and ever.
Yeah. These are old Reddit arguments. So things like who created God? Things like can God create a God more powerful than him? All of these different questions that people have in regards to God, they're all answerable questions. But the thing is, it's interesting to me is that I just went through and gave you an accounting, a full accounting for my justification and why my justifications are there. You can't use your bad faith. Now, please.
I'm not saying you're bad faith.
Now, please don't tell me some bullshit about how your parents told you that it was okay to lie and that's why you think so. Give me the actual reason why you think that.
I already gave you the reason 5 times. I'll give it to you again. It comes from a multitude of reasons. It comes from the way I was raised. It comes from my life experiences. It comes from the influences I've had in my life. It comes probably partially from my DNA. So yeah, I've answered this question like 10
somebody
times.
Taught it to you? Like what are those experiences?
Part of the stuff I believe is largely because of the early influences I've had in life. Yeah, sure.
So it really is like your parents and like just people around you who told you it wasn't
Yeah, I'm
okay
sure
to
if
lie?
I'm sure if my parents were like chronic liars and were like really shitty people, I might have a different position on lying. Sure. It's not the only source, but it's one of the things. And just like you, I'm assuming your parents were Christian, were they not?
Yeah, that's a complex story, but let's just say yes.
Okay. So yeah, so you learned your religion from your parents,
No,
most likely.
I'm an Orthodox Christian.
Okay, but you picked. Do you think that your parents being religious had no influence? Like, do you think if your parents
They
were
had
Muslim,
had a counter influence, had a
do you
counter
think-
influence.
do you think if your parents were Jewish or Muslim, you would still be?
No, I'm not saying that there's not influences which can
Exactly.
be,
That's
which
the-
can be
that's the whole point I'm
associated
Yeah, there's
towards,
influence.
but that doesn't make the belief true just because it's influenced. And it's not a justification to say, unless you really just mean my justification for why I think lying is wrong is because other people basically told me that it's wrong. Is
That's
that
a
really the
combination.
justification?
Well, that's part of it. It's also
Well,
my
what
life
else could there be?
I just gave you. I don't
Well,
know.
but you're not really
This
being
is so cringe.
specific. I'm
You're-
trying to
you're
figure
just
it
keep,
out,
like-
man.
I've explained to you like 5 times. Like this
No,
is your tactic.
you keep making the assertion over and over and over again. But when I try to nail in the specifics, then you run away. So like you say, okay, so you say, okay, maybe it was my parents and maybe it was my neighbors and maybe it was some of my friends.
There's a combination of things.
Yeah, the combination of things. Well, let's get into the combination of things. Like with experience, what experience would tell you that lying's immoral, even to tell a white lie, which is what we're talking about? What experience do you have that says white lie is immoral?
Okay, I mean, you want me to go back to my childhood from fucking when I was 5 years old? I would assume this is not an exact experience, but I would assume would be something along the lines of like, I told the lie, and then like my parents explained to me why lying is wrong, why I shouldn't do it, why it's not a good thing, why it's not good for character. And because I was very young and impressionable, I observed that, and I absorbed that into my psyche. So yeah, I'm assuming it's something like that.
So, okay, now I guess there's nowhere else to go. If really, if honestly the only justification that you have again. Because what you just said to me was other people told me that.
Same argument.
Wait, that's what you just said to me again.
20 times.
You said I just absorbed this into my brain from other people. Somebody else told me this. That's what you just said to me again.
Well, it's also my DNA. It's also my experiences. Yeah, I've already given you that same answer.
You haven't really given me the experiences, other than somebody told you this.
Dude,
just so you know.
It's so cringy.
Why do you keep on asserting that? But it's like I'm trying to get to the heart of an issue here.
No, you're not. You don't care about getting to the heart of it. You just want to prove your point.
My point's been proven. I'm trying to help you so that you don't fall into this ever again.
You're trying to help me.
All right. Well, I mean, if you don't want to talk about it anymore, you can just end the stream. I don't care.
No, dude, we can keep going. I don't care. You were the one that wanted to end it like an hour ago.
Alex, there's a guy who wants to come on. He says he's gonna wreck you, and you're scared, and he's in the backstage.
Yeah, sounds definitely like a person I want to bring on. Let's see.
Oh, my bad. I meant he wants to come on and like compliment you a lot and stuff. So you should like let him on.
Who are we talking about?
Some guy named Kiwi or Kiwi man.
Yeah, he doesn't have his camera on, which makes me suspect that it's that fucking weirdo from last night. If he wants to turn his camera on, then he can definitely come on, or he can come on another night, as long as he's not that really cringy dude.
What are we?
Bro,
we're in almost 4 hours, dude.
And if it is,
I do gotta get rolling now. I didn't realize.
I wanted to get rolling like fucking 2 hours ago, but
all right.
Yeah, I don't know. He can come back another night if he's not that like weirdo from last night. Okay. Anyway, are we done, or is there more questions you want to ask me, Andrew?
No, I'm good, man. I'm all set.
Fun times as always, buddy.
Yep.
All right,
Have
dude.
a good night.
I'll catch you later.